and I'm streaming and recording. So I'm going to prepare by transferring this link to my other sites on Sawyer Heaven's Gate and Twitter X. I think I have to reinstall Firefox.
Oh, yeah.
Mm. But at least this is working. With my picture of Ceres.
It's so serious.
Yes.
That's
Okay.
a bad joke.
Yeah, I mean, you know,
I like the way that Mandela has come out.
it is taking a long time to go to Firefox,
Twitter
Twitter
was a
X.
problem last time too, if I remember. Wasn't like,
Yeah,
didn't you
so I'll
give
do
up
it
on it?
again.
So there must be, maybe you have to
Sometimes the timing.
some something with OBS and Twitter.
Whoops, it was just a command and I got rid of it. Up there it goes right away. I guess trying 3 times helped to get a better connection.
What the heck? Well, I'm having my first hot flash.
Oh, really?
Now, why would it have uploaded that? It's the weirdest thing. Like,
Okay, it's not going to work on Facebook. So I have to do it this way.
hmm. It did it again. I don't understand. Hmm.
So my title is Space Aliens Are the Most True Antichrists with Their Trained Human Counterparts. So those are just, that's my clickbait, if you want to think of it that way. I mean, it was things I was looking at today, and so my response to those things that I was looking at today. Um, High Dawn Possession and Dario Brujo. What's happening is I'm going to try to talk about these subjects here in my title, and still have to bring out my chat room to get my little setup right. And let's see here, let's pick a couple more minutes. 'Cause I was watching Russell Brand, and I enjoy a lot of what he does, whether I agree with it or not, as well as a lot of people. Um, okay, so I have that there, and this here.
This, that, and the other.
Yes, and the chat there. So, without further ado, oh wait, one thing I didn't check is that size of my, oh yeah, I think that's too big. I do want people to be able to read that screen that I put up there.
Let me. Well, I'm on my phone, so it's.
There you go, I did it. And I just need to adjust this a little bit. That should work.
Now you have a blank space. There, that's good. That's
Good?
well, but it covers up the one thing. The one, here, look at here. It covers up that a little. So if you bring it, but
Oh,
it's
I
fine.
see what you're
It's
saying.
not that big of a
I
difference.
see what you're saying. Yeah, I don't want to cover up that much of that. So yeah, let me
It's
fix
not
that.
like a lot of.
Oh, that's better. Well, a little bit more. I like those pictures. I want them to be able to see them. So thanks for bringing that up. Um, so yes, the notes say that start the tape. So you know it's the authentic tape with Doe saying, "What are we having?" Jen already says turkey, and Doe says, smashed potatoes, because Jen already was reading it off. Couldn't hear her very well. Doe said smashed potatoes. That's what he called them instead of mashed. And what kind of gravy? Doe asked, and and he said turkey gravy, I think.
Yeah.
And then Doe asked, when do we pick up Lagodi and Noroni? Starry said, well, you have to leave at about 7:50 p.m., I guess. Then he said, let's talk. As I get information clarified, need to pass it on as soon as possible after receiving it. I didn't get those words exact, by the way. None of these words are exact necessarily, automatically. It's my notes. And my notes alone, they're not Kathy's notes, in case they decide to try to add my note taking to the lawsuit. Anyway, so I'm going to read what this is. Um, Sawyer's Notes on Audio 266, recorded on September 13th, 1987, and having to do with hugging, understanding what is happening to us, hugging our classmates, and it goes on to the next day and says receiving older member, visits, inhibiting factors to receiving older member's mind, too enthusiastic hugging, The next day continues, drained from human ties. The task of visits was to free us and become recipients of a higher bond, embellishing instructions, clipping ties. The whole thing was 64 minutes. And Kathy and I just listened to it. And there's a lot of things from the last tape that I still need to go over. Um, so
We got time.
I've got these other subjects I want to talk about, but maybe I won't get to any of them. Who knows, right? Uh, so yes, Dario Brujo was from Argentina. I think you've come into the stream before. So Dawn asks me if do you stream on Twitch? No, one time Dio Nerd helped me get it set up on Twitch, and him and I think did something there on his account. But no, I'm too lazy to try to expand it much, and also I don't have the bandwidth. Uh, Most of the time. So going back to the tape, that it's hard to really understand this tape if you don't have context. I'm only going to go through a little bit of context because there's a lot to it, but it has to do with uh, um, showing your older members' love to others among us. To, that so when this happened, when students were sent back, they didn't have to do it if they didn't want to, but it was a task. So it wasn't something that somebody would refuse to do if they wanted to be, working with Doe as their lab instructor. And I think they might have canceled some at the end, as he says in this tape, but most of the students went back and visited with families. And most of them also took another class member who was also visiting with somebody close by. Like I went with someone in
You can
Sarah
say.
Fody.
I was gonna say you could say who you went with.
Yeah, I went with Sarah Fody, and because she had family in the same town where I had family, because that's where I met her. But anyway, so and Merck Cody went with who?
Maybe Parkody.
I know he said talked
I'm
about
only.
it.
That was maybe the first time that he went because Doe was talking about how Chris, who I'm assuming was Mark's brother, had such a pull on Mark and how that would affect Mark and how that was affecting Parkody. So that's the only reason why I'm saying that. That Parkody was potentially on that visit, and so that was affecting him as well.
Mhm.
That most of Mark's attention was on his brother.
Yeah, Park Cody, I think, was the individual. Maybe I'm wrong about that. If Mark wants to chime in, he can. I guess we listen to City still. But
Excuse me.
but
For that first visit.
yeah, so that this was the second visit, I
Well, I
believe.
thought you said on the second visit that's when Mark and Sarah went together.
No, but it's talking, this is 1987.
I know, I'm just saying for this visit was the first visit that Mark had gone on to talk with his family.
It was?
I
No, it wasn't. Let's start over.
It was not the time that he was going that he went with
Right,
Parkody. The time
right,
that he went with Sarah, when they came back, they left for good shortly thereafter.
right,
So I'm guessing that was the second, or I don't know, was it the third time that Mark went to see his family in Arizona? I don't know. But the last time that Mark went to see his family in Arizona, he was with Sarah.
right. That's how we understand it
That's why I'm
from the
saying that
tapes
this was the first time that Mark had gone back home, because it sounds like his partner was Parkody.
in 1987. Yes.
That's why I'm saying that.
And that's why Kathy said that it might have been the third time total because of 1985 when we visited. He might have visited with family because I did. And at that time, we didn't all take somebody with us. So I don't know if anybody took somebody to actually meet our family members, but I did the second time. Anyway, so and also Al Odie and June Odie met with my parents during that second visit. And there were some other members of my vehicle family. I can remember we were all on the porch in New York, and they were just, lighthearted as usual. Nothing unusual about them and their um, very nice, keen, vibrant personalities. Alodi and Juno both had, they knew who they were. They knew who their older member is. And so it was, and that doesn't mean there's no preaching going on during that time, unless somebody asked them a question. I don't know if anybody did. But I know my vehicle's dad, I think, was thankful. He said that to me. He was to thank, well, that was the first time where he said to thank T and Doe for, because he knew I was, part of the group and that I believed in it. So he wasn't insulting about it the way he said it, which to me was a big step, you know, to take. This wasn't easy for the loved ones of the class members. And that's what you'll see also talked about in tape 265 quite a bit on how they could have resentment and that it doesn't do them any good for us to not give them a chance to get past their resentment and telling them that T and O loved them and suffered for their suffering. So that's, I encourage people to listen to tape 265 to get the full, and 264 as well, because it's the start of the subject uh, that has to do with the visits that we're doing or happening at that time. And so a number of students did have difficulties in their visits. And, but I'm not going to get into that because,
What's there anything going on in the chat?
yeah, I'll check it in a second here.
Oh, I guess you had just checked it, so it's probably not necessary.
There was somebody that came into it and said, Krell, Krell's here early. Hey, Kathy and Sawyer.
Gosh. Hello.
Yes, 264 and 265.
But today we listened to
And this one,
266.
266, is the one we just listened to.
Oh,
Gives you a series of what Doe considered to be perhaps the most special time of the classroom because of how much he was feeling uh, T's love, T's mind, T's help, and seeing and giving the class members the task of becoming a conduit. Because up until that point, um, we weren't really conduits except for the time when we went out spreading the information in 1975 6. But at that time, we weren't really cohesive. We were pretty scattered because we were brand new to the information. I mean, in that kind of direct way and unique way that came from T and Do directly. So, um, so this was the task of being a conduit and how to do it, and and uh, and equating, talking about what next level love is. Next level love making is having their force and
I
knowing
wouldn't
that their force is coming through us.
really use that term
He said
for.
love making.
Well, but that's what one of the class members said. Yeah. I don't know what you took on your notes, but that's what one of the class members said. Could you say it was like the next level's form of lovemaking or something? So that
Yeah, I remember
I'm
that, but
just
I
saying it's
thought
not like it
in
was
this
an original thing
that was
that
in a different tape, though, wasn't it?
that was like knowledge is the next level's love.
Yeah, that's a
Not
different tape.
necessarily like love making. That's a different connotation. I don't know. I don't mean to like harp on it or anything, and I
Yeah, it's all
shouldn't
right.
say anything.
No, I'm glad you did because maybe I got that wrong. Um, I forgot how Doe said it. I want to just check on that. It's important. He said taking in older members' presence. I'm just going to read different things about love that he said. Taking in older members' presence is synonymous with feeling love, filled to overflowing, so filled that nothing can add to it, and you wouldn't want anything to take away from it. He didn't feel like all the students, or even that many students, I guess, 'cause it was my impression, have experienced that feeling. Well, I don't know if I experienced that feeling. Maybe a little bit. And he was very, he compares it to feeling like he could float like a blimp, which when Kathy and I, took note of, we thought that was a little silly comparison, but that's the one he used. But he said, right, not many at this point of the class have experienced that. I've received instruction, he says, this morning on how to apply and assist that force in ways it might still be a little lacking. In other words, he was going to put some things into motion to help us um, come closer to experiencing that, or actually experiencing that force within us. And he didn't mean when he said that some were a little lacking that that was synonymous with any failure on anybody's part. See, and something that was challenging to some students was, in a sense, not believing him when he would say something about, well, in this case, that it's not failure if you're not feeling this. It's not lacking as a failure type of lacking. Um, but that the reason is you have to receive the medicine is because you can't get it straight. And he said, and I'm not giving those, I'm not giving you those reasons, so don't take them if you are loyal to me. You won't listen to those forces that would have you think your love isn't, your older member's love isn't all you want. So at least you had to, not had to, but if you were going to be part of his mind, you would be desiring to have your older member's love as all you want. And then the older member would help uh, students rise to that, which is always going to be a process. And he says he knows that if you want it to be, it will grow. But there are other areas that Doe said he had instructions to give to assist in having that feeling. And he says some class members, when he talks to them to describe it, it I didn't get the words right here. This was very hard to write down. Uh, that it beats being in love at any level, at any human level. It surpasses it. And what you're filled with at the time is not something that comes from, well, it's, don't know exactly what to call it, but it's love from the next level that comes through sections of pipe. He and Tia used the idea that they were sections of pipe before a number of times, that they wanted to be clear pipes for the information. And it's interesting now that I think about it, now that I know more about Scripture, because I didn't know during the classroom much about Scripture at all, that the pipes are the way that the menorah was designed to have like 7 pipes that the flame was coming out of the top of them and was fed from their drawing on the fuel, the oil, I think, that filled the lamp that was being burned to produce light. And there's a whole bunch of analogies with that, I think. And the two witnesses were compared to being the lampstands, which that's what we're talking about. That menorah is like one of the original lampstands that was designed by Moses from what his connection was with his older member at the time. And that gets to the whole Christing process, because I put in my title here something about the Antichrist and how
Mm.
being Antichrist means that you're, I mean, there's a lot of different ways, a number of ways to look at it, I believe. I'm not saying any of them are wrong, like Russell Brand was talking about in his latest video that we watched a little bit of. But I think this one's like a second one with that because didn't wasn't there a lot of Peter Thiel talking?
No, just at the
Or
beginning.
just in the beginning? Okay, yeah. So it was the same one, I guess, but I paid attention to it this time 'cause we didn't actually watch the whole thing, did we? Or was I washing
I
dishes or
don't think
something?
yeah, you were washing dishes, but I don't know that we watched it all. I can only listen to so much before I get
Yeah,
annoyed.
yeah. So I watched it anyway today
That's good.
on my day off, and so um, Russell asks the question, "What is the Antichrist?" And is it the diminishing of the spiritual manifestation? Uh, Something like that. Some of his questions, and I can tell you exactly. Actually, not that it's important, but or he was asking, is the one world government the Antichrist? Is the materialistic
No,
world?
or well, I'm sorry, I shouldn't say no, but that's what Thiel says is the
Oh, right,
Antichrist.
right,
The
right.
one Peter Thiel says that the one world government is the
And he's
Antichrist.
part of what Palantir,
He is
one of the
the
founding members,
yes, that's right.
which is interesting also relative to the other part of my title um, on the space aliens uh, being the biggest manifestation of the Antichrist and using humans as their puppets. So they're like the puppet masters. And I believe I see that in a clearer way than I ever did before. Um, Even though it may sound the same coming out of my mouth. But it just makes so much sense now, the way that uh, those are the reason why you'll see throughout people's opinions of what's happening with this world order since even the 1800s in the United States and Europe, that there's there's been a total push for basically two classes of people: the people that think and are the leaders of the world
Mm-hmm.
in all the worldly ways, the bankers and the rich
The rich
families, and
men,
yeah,
well, or not just
yeah,
necessarily men, but yeah, the rich people and
right, and and they're the ones that bankroll and are behind the politicians that bankroll the wars and the whole budget, right? And so they all have the same agenda, whether they're conscious of it or not, that are generally thinking of themselves as the ruling class, the, the ones that, for whatever reason, climbed to or received the um, the inheritance of ruling over humans. Because whether they think that there's something special for that or not. It's kind of bred into them. It's bred into the genes to go in that direction. And so the space aliens, they see who's coming up. They literally, with their uh, devices, can observe what humans are doing that they want to focus in on. Because that was actually one of the tasks they had, I believe. I could be wrong about that. As watchers from previous civilization, before they broke off from the next level and went their own way, and then resented the next level for
Their own mistake,
their own mistake.
their
Right,
own choice.
right. Um,
Typical.
yeah,
Typical
yeah,
demon
and
behavior.
then lost the perspective that they had when they were elementary members of the next level, for the most part. Although Doe felt like there were some that still knew who the chief of chiefs was, or knew that there was a chief of chiefs, and still wanted to please um, that individual in some way, and were doing it, then you see that happening between the different forces that are against each other on the planet. To where they have different priorities, and they don't want to work together, or they do want to work together, and the whole thing with some people are. I was listening to some other long-term, well, Alex Jones. I was listening to, um, and I listened to him years ago when he had the channel that was had that unique name. What was it? Um,
He's based out of Austin.
yeah, he was based out of Austin.
I think he still is.
Oh, yeah, that would have been cool to look him up. Anyway, that didn't happen. I know 'cause he's a jerk a lot of times, so I know. Well, I don't want to call him a jerk because he just. I mean, he said things to me that that he talking about the kids that he didn't think were killed. I think he was just wrong about stuff, but he comes across as he's right about stuff, and holds his ground sometimes. So I don't know. Maybe he still thinks that way. But other than that, I don't really have anything against the man, the person that I'm aware of. Maybe I'm not saying he's a good person.
Neither do I. Than that,
Yeah,
I cannot
yeah.
can't
Well,
get past the heinous things he did in the name of
right. He did some
his
things that were pretty
conspiracy
heinous. Right.
theory.
Uh, right. It's
I
anyway.
mean, just telling people that like their kids had been like shot to death, that did not actually happen, is really heinous. Can you imagine?
Yeah, yeah. That's heinous. I don't know all the
And then
details.
like
Kathy knows more about it than I do.
having to
And I,
defend like your child dying, like none of that
right.
is okay.
Right. No, that's pretty
He's a yeah.
bad. I hope he's thinks of that as a mistakes made. Because if he does, then
He certainly got dragged through court over it.
yeah. Well, he's also who knows how many things were made up against him too. I don't know. I just know that you can't believe everything the media tells you. And I was on the other side of the coin at the time when that was happening, so I couldn't imagine that that was a false flag event over there in Connecticut. And I was dealing with people that thought that almost every shooting was a false flag event. And they said that false flag event didn't mean that people didn't
Didn't
die,
die.
but it just meant that it wasn't what you
But Alex
are
Jones
being told
was,
it was.
as far as my understanding, I could be wrong about this, but my understanding was that he was insisting that their kids weren't dead and like going so far as to want to dig up their graves
Yeah, that part
and
of it.
like saying that like there wasn't any bodies in there, and if they didn't have if they didn't have anything to hide, then why wouldn't they let him dig up their dead child's grave? It's like, come on, man.
Yeah,
There's
really.
like a point where you don't need to prove if there's a conspiracy theory or not. Like, you just maybe need to step back on that one.
Yeah, yeah. Stepping back is probably harder to do when you've established yourself as an
Yeah.
authority in certain ways.
Well, I
Uh,
wouldn't say he's an authority in anything.
well, he
He
did predict pretty good of crashing of planes into the buildings
So did a
in
lot
New
of
York
other
City.
people too.
Well, I don't know about that. I just know about
Well,
his
plenty of other
predictions.
people did too. So
Well, I know it was talked about. I mean, it wasn't a new subject,
no, like
but
those buildings were actually designed with that in mind, so they wouldn't fall. So
by accident,
no, well, but
not
whatever.
designed
I
by.
mean, like if a plane drives into a building by accident or by design or not, like it was supposedly designed with that in mind. A plane hitting them would was not supposed to bring them down.
True, I agree with that from my understanding.
Yeah.
Anyway, I was listening to um, him with his guest, and primarily I was more interested in his guest, which I don't remember the name of. Uh, but she was talking about. Um, I'm not saying everything she was saying was accurate, but the few things that both he and she said that stood out over the whole conversation about world orders and who's over who and all the different machinations of organizations and
Like things that
bankers and
are proven,
yes,
like connections, right?
right, all those proven connections that
Yeah.
exist that we can't do anything about, so it doesn't really matter that we know about it.
But still,
Right, but still, it's makes for
it's like it's good to know. I don't,
it is good to know because
so you can
if you
watch
have a
out for
mind
it.
to quest for the truth, right? If you want to know what's really happening as best you can, to me that's a next level characteristic. Um, because of course you've been living in a snake pit where a lot of lies are being said, and when you have that experience with those lies, directly or indirectly, and you come into this world in these vehicles, your ancestors have some experience like that, and who else, your the current lifetime that you're living, you have experience with society, and you learn to, you know, kind of see the handwriting on the wall sometimes when certain things are said or depicted, and you think, well, that doesn't make a lot of sense, and then if you're a mind to, you maybe not at that moment, but at some point you search it down a little bit, and then you find out all this other stuff about it, and then you start to see where the propaganda was, and then there's of course there's misinformation on top of the propaganda, and it's all mixed up with facts and stuff, and but if you've got like a desire to know the truth and you keep on pressing for it, it seems like to me that the next level has ways of surfacing things so that there's whistleblowers and things like that because those people want to get the truth out about stuff instead of keeping it to their chest because they're afraid of persecution or backlash to their families and things like that, which definitely occur. Definitely, there's definitely ramifications to people saying things that other people don't want you to talk about. So it's all justified, but it seems like the next level of consciousness can be stronger with people when they're in certain situations to where they want the truth to come out. I think that's the case with myself and Kathy with T&O's information. We want people to know what they're talking about. And Carl Odie is the same way, and Juan
Hmm.
Odie is the same way.
Yeah.
And, and
And there shouldn't be any real, yeah, I don't
yeah,
know why there's a problem.
so I think that's the reason why these things do come out and that we can actually figure some things out enough to get a feeling for what direction they're going, to get a feeling whether they're from the next level or they're from the lower forces. That's really the bottom line. It becomes a kind of thing that it becomes like for or against. in your view. Not that we judge people as for or against, because that's not up to us. We just don't have that task.
That's right.
We can judge whether we're for or against what they're saying, and where we believe that it's coming from, whose mind is stimulating those ideas and thoughts and behaviors and ways. Um, be it,
What was Dow saying about not like about T and accepting if you didn't accept everything about her and him, what
oh,
was?
I didn't
But
report that very well.
he was saying something about like her mind or something. I couldn't remember. You didn't record that part well.
Let me search for it.
Because that was interesting.
Hmm. You probably
Because he
said
said
T a bunch of times.
like if you had an issue with like the weight of
Oh
of
yeah,
their vehicles or um, Doe's sexuality or
or the way his nose was shaped,
yeah,
or
or how big his nose was, or if you had
um,
any kind of hang-ups. That's the word he used, hang-ups.
yes, hang-ups. That'll get me right to it if I spelled it right. And there they are, hang-ups. Okay, so
That was interesting.
you were saying that, which was interesting to hear, because he said the way that my older member explained it to me, I think is the way he said it, which I don't think was while T was in her vehicle, because he was in his quarters. He was having communication with T, and he feels like the way that it was explained to him was that if there are inhibiting factors, like one joining hands in direct proportion to any inhibiting factors to feel that total unlimited relationship with Doe and T, if there are any hang-ups you have related to because of the hang-ups of Doe's sexuality or the shape of his nose or towards T's vehicle, this is time to eradicate those hang-ups and do it quickly. And if you had hang-ups, you can't love Doe totally if you can't love T totally. And has to be in all respects an examination in meditation. What are those inhibiting factors? Then he goes on to say, like in presence room, which is like a place to go to meditate, uh, uh, he was trying to give us some keywords at times when he was in the presence room with us. And he was expressing his love to his older member. And he wanted his older member's presence to fill him, not just the mind, but if I have any problem with my older member's vehicle, that's my problem. The next level gave you and me a next level member to relate to the total love, pure giving you that out of and giving you the out of having certain hang-ups. So the next level is actually giving us the things that we might see that are wrong with Doe as to use, if we want to, as an excuse to not um, receive his love and give his love to others because of. That's one way to say it, maybe. And that's very interesting. A number of facts in here that I was taking note of that Doe's talking about. Um, in tape 265, you'll hear him talking about communion and, consuming the body, blood as the way to think of physically containing your older member. Um, because your older member is, I'm thinking about it in the first time, like is actually physical material. It's like a plasma kind of physicality. Their soul, their mind. It's not etheric. It's not nebulous like a discarnate human, um, or like a fleeting vibration in the airwaves. Like a packet of network information floating through the ethers. It's actually a living being, even without a vehicle. But even its vehicle is an emanation that was designed to be the instrument for that older member's or younger member's mind to work through in the more dense physical world of their spacecrafts and uh, on Earth if they do a task on Earth, and being outside of an incarnation. And I don't know. There's a bunch of interesting things that I'm forgetting now, but I'm gonna keep on going though. That how he wanted his older members' presence to fill him, not just the mind, but if I have a problem with my older member's vehicle, that's my problem. Oh, I read this already. Uh, okay, I'm back to where, and the idea of purity wasn't. It's not just cerebral. It's not just a mental kind of thing. I mean, if we see like Doe's accent, or judging him by his word power, or his appearance, or the amount of fat, has to be total, and you need to eradicate those things if you have hang-ups with Doe's vehicle or T's vehicle, to try to bring in the presence of T or Doe. And if I'm having to have that connection, I need to feel the power of love, and has to be that presence to feel the total power. And if any hang-ups, I can't connect totally. Has to be that's what he's feeling in us, in them, in the students. Us meaning anybody that chooses to be their students at this time. It always applies to all those that are gravitating in their direction. I did. You gotta open up a new one. If you can feel something toward, let's see. And then he begins to talk about more that if you can feel something towards a classmate, and that classmate is attempting to be a pipe for what you are working on, it's something less that you are in trouble. In other words, because this tape is talking about going through, taking on the task of showing our love physically to fellow classmates. And that amounted to hugging in a certain kind of way when we were coming back, when we had a, no, at a specific time when individuals were coming back from their visits, giving them a hug and not having a hug linger as longer than it should, being sensitive to how long you hug somebody. Yeah, Jan Odie. Yeah, he was talking about Jan Odie being upset and and Sir Odie hugging her 4 times. And Doe said that that was off track in so many words. That he could imagine that, well, he only had instruction to hug her once, but he could imagine that if she was really failing badly, that that he might extend that. Okay, you can imagine that. But 3 or 4 times, no, he couldn't imagine that. That was off track. And what the reason it was off track was because that's his job to console Jan Odie. Because Jan Odie's love is for her older member, even though um, we were given the task to show our older members' love to our classmates by the hugging task, because I was there for that, and and that if you were going to hug somebody that your vehicle really wouldn't want to hug, then you might hug them a little longer, a little more, um, I don't know, maybe a little more feeling. But if it's somebody that your vehicle would gravitate to hugging, then you would be more guarded in that hug of duration and the degree in which you were, and it wasn't a hug to where you would feel the other person's body on yours. It was, it wasn't, you weren't pressing up against the other person. It wasn't that kind of a hug. Because Doe demonstrated what kind of a hug it was from the first visit, where, which affirmed my memory that that's when hugging started. When Doe said that we could give a hug to those returning from the first visit because Doe was doing it, and he was very proud of each student having left the classroom and not, like officially, but just physically, and went back to visit their families in 1985 and then returned because that was certainly a test whether to return or not. I mean, you certainly had the opportunity to not return, um, which, that kind of opportunity existed all the time. And even though um, I and others were committed, I didn't have any desire at all when I did the visit to New York Vehicles Family in 1985. I had no desire, no thoughts at all of what if I just didn't take the plane back. I could get a job or visit with this person, that person, and who knows what. I could have thought that maybe the next level wanted me to stay here and help somebody in my family. I don't know what I could have thought, but I didn't have those kind of thoughts. Now, some probably did, though, and that could have been something that they overcame. the influence of, or something that they later went with, and could be the and well, my understanding was the reason authority left, and he was still in the class during this meeting, um, was because of the visit the second time when he visited with his brothers and his brothers' family members, and he felt like they were probably wishing that he would be there, and he enjoyed being there so much that he was divided, and he came back and told Doe that, and I don't know what Doe said to him, but he was around for a while um, before he left, and then he even came back for a visit at one point to see if he to see what Doe would say about. I don't know. He just wanted to see, I guess, if he felt the same connection he felt before, and I guess he didn't because he didn't. He then left. Um, he did that second visit, but then he left us. Anyway, I don't want to go on with that, but let me see what else is there. Yeah, I'm just reading it. Um, well, he talks about becoming a pipeline, a conduit for your older member's mind to go through you to other people, and that there can actually be miracles that can come from that. I'm not, the previous tapes, 265 and 4 before that, I think expound on that a lot. It doesn't mean that they're going to necessarily relate to you in a positive way. The individuals, that um, you're talking to in your families or um, wherever, uh, and that even that love can bring out negativity from them. So they might not always relate. Uh, so they might not always be related to you in a pleasant way, though you would be vibrating to them a love vibration. And he says that the power can flow right to them and they will respond on the level they are on. And if they have a negative responses, well, just recognize this power can express itself in a number of ways. And he suggested at the time to do some Bible research on what the gifts are. And I don't know if I ever really researched that, but it'd be interesting to look at them. Oh yeah, here's where he talks about the hugging 4 times. But I think I already went over that. I didn't think I got it wrong. based on what you said here. Okay, thanks. I
Counts for me.
uh, um, he actually gave a lesson to sorority who just came back during this meeting, I believe, and, and he walked in the door, and Doe was bringing up soon thereafter. I don't remember exactly when he walked in the door, but brings up that uh, that we're like little puppies with the mother dog. This in this analogy, Doe would be the mother dog, and we're like the puppies that are so busy nursing and are aggressive in nursing that some of the others step back as can't make their way to receive nutrition, and as a result, the aggressive ones get fat, and the ones with restraint get lean or don't get adequate nutrition. And he's just saying that it's wrong for someone in the class to be a hog. An example was opening the door for Doe to come into the house or the room because we'd be watching for him, so we knew when he was coming in. And so sorority would run up there and open the door, and he was a little bit too hoggish of that. It would have been, he said that if he was somebody else that wanted to do that, to show their older member that, they wanted to, do that for him, even though it seems like a silly thing, I guess. But, um, but it became a lesson ground. It's interesting. Uh, and, uh, and so that the ones that were letting sorority do it because they didn't want to try to beat him to it. Not that we did that. We didn't compete for doing that. Um, but if they were too reticent, that was another lesson for them to not be. He said that if he wanted to serve his older member in that way, he would have beat sorority to the to the door, and or at least tried to, you know. But and he probably would have. But that's kind of silly to think about because that wasn't what was really happening. Racing to the door to open the door for tea.
T would be like,
Yeah, right. What are you two up to? But anyway, but sorority gets the lesson that, he's sometimes needs to be more restrained,
and let
where the
others.
others, and the others need to step up more.
Yeah.
So that,
He needs to
and
give other
after
people
that
the
happened,
chance.
there were others that would go to the door and they wouldn't have to race anybody for it. He was restrained about it. Though appreciated that he wanted to do that. So he didn't lose any points in his, soul development and his love for his older member. He, but he actually gained more points by putting into motion the lesson. It can be that kind of detail that because the idea of people racing to open the door for Doe, some of the individuals might have thought, well, that's Doe's really thinks he's something special, huh? That he's got to have somebody open the door for him. But he didn't need anybody to open the door for him. He was perfectly capable of doing it, and he did things all the time by himself. But he recognized that the task he had was to demonstrate how you would act towards an older member of the next level. It's like when you walk into when a human walks in, a human master uh, of a, a dog walks into the room. That dog, a lot of times, will be just happy to see that individual and will run up to them and sometimes lick them and and jump up on them if they're allowed to and and be ready to play and everything because they love that individual. That's where this is coming from. This isn't like an artificial thing. Although the vehicles can get in the way with stuff, right? To make you think that, oh God, I don't want to be seen as somebody that is a lapdog kind of thing. Just you know, hanging on to every word and but that's the way it was for me with Doe. I was hanging on his every word. Go to the chat. Thank you. Uh, let's see. Orbit Snoogs Laghouse says, hi Sawyer. Quick question. Whatever happened to Rio de Angelo? I saw him in the BBC documentary. He called in the ascension when it happened. Right. And then he says hopefully he'll think of it as a learning experience. Oh, okay, that wasn't related to the previous comment, I guess. But so I don't know what Rio's doing now. I have no communication with him, and only individuals I know that have communication with him are Mark and Sarah, and they don't talk to me about things. They never have. So I don't know. I did have a telephone and email relationship with Rio, but it was like about 20 years ago. Seems like I don't know. Maybe it was less than that. For a number of years. So I don't know. Um, yes, I saw him in the BBC documentary. I was a little surprised, but not really. Right. He called in what you're calling the ascension when it happened, and yes, that's right. That's what he did. He had that task given to him, and he took it and performed it. I mean, if anybody does get in touch with him, I ask him if he'd please allow people to have access to the scripts that were written so that other people can choose whether to make movies out of it. I know that's kind of a strange subject because, I don't really want just anybody having those scripts and then copywriting them or something. But they're already, I mean, the meeting script was already copyrighted, so that doesn't stop somebody from, making their own copyright on it and trying to enforce it. We know what that's about.
Well,
But
Mark and Sarah own those copyrights now.
right, right, because right, the courts gave them to them, I guess.
Yep.
I don't know. I'm still going to fight that. But in any case, um, that's about all I can say about Rio, I guess, right now. But Dawn says, do you think the crew is active in next level vehicles and crafts that have been sighted around the world? I don't really know. I think it's possible, but yeah, it's highly possible. I say highly because,
That people are seeing them.
yeah, I think so. I think it's possible that people could be seeing next level vehicles and crafts. Um, I can think of reasons why the next level would want to stimulate people to believe they exist, even though if they think of them as space aliens.
What did T
Um,
and Doe say about the next level appearing to people?
do you remember anything?
I do, but I'm curious what you remember
Um,
because you were there and I was not. I've only heard tapes.
Well, I mean, they talked about the next level having tasks to do in the world that they didn't know about. And they talked about some of the things in the record books being tasks that different members of the next level were doing in between the older members coming to take human vehicles. And they talked about, it could be a task as simple as a soil sample, because they were studying the geology. And they talked about one time that there were some individuals recorded by humans to have
You
be
know,
wearing this old time clothing.
and T said that somebody in the wardrobe department got it wrong and she was going to have words with them when she got back.
Right.
But what did they specifically say about the next level? I mean, you know what I'm talking about, right? What I'm
I'm
referring
trying to
to,
pull it in if there is anything. Well, we know
where
that
they said the next
Doe had a
level
number of
doesn't
experiences.
appear to people, that they don't need to prove who they are, and that they don't try to scare people, or
I think that's all
is
true,
what
but
I'm referring
that
back
doesn't
to.
mean to me that they won't ever show up to someone.
No, of course not.
Right. So
No,
that's what
I'm
I'm
not
saying.
saying that. I was just curious. I
Yeah.
feel like I've heard uh,
No, I.
you say
It's.
before that they don't appear before people, that they're not gonna come in a spacecraft and be like,
Oh,
hey, here we
yeah.
are, we're the next level. Like,
That's
they're
true.
not gonna be doing like aerial stunts in the sky and drawing attention to
Yes.
themselves.
Yes. That's a good point.
So
That's a
that's
good
what I
point.
was, that's why I'm
Yeah.
responding the way
Yeah.
I
No,
am.
that's a really good point. That's.
That's why I was confused.
Yeah. Then I just wasn't really tuning into. I mean, like, let's say you see a light in the sky, like it's a meteor, or you think it's a this or that. Um, I was thinking that the next level could be behind things happening. Well, because it happened to me, I believe. I was asked for a sign one time before I came back into my senses of wanting to be of service again. After I was outside the classroom for over a year, probably by then, and I asked for a sign, and I saw a streak in the sky. So I felt like that they gave me a sign. I could be wrong, but uh, but what Kathy's talking about is that they're not going to uh, show you so much that they're going to like shock your vehicle into belief or something like that because they don't have any reason to do that. That's actually detrimental for your growth unless that was pre-designed to be that way. Like, but we don't have any reason to believe that it's about to happen because Doe said that we might see thousands of spacecrafts coming in ships from one part of the heavens and from the next level part of the heavens at times. And some of those thousands would be uh, space alien crafts. So that's the more likely origin of sightings that are happening in the world now. Or, of course, they could be human generated spacecrafts, human made spacecrafts, top secret military crafts that were built based on the crafts that crashed and things like that, or the ones that were given to them by the space alien souls to humans, because Doe felt like that they did give them some hardware to lure them into believing in them, which is part of that same subject that I was talking about as the Antichrist. Are those individuals, the space aliens are the biggest form of that Antichrist because they're trying to use humans as their slaves, and they're trying to encourage humans to not think there is any next level and to instead uh, directly or indirectly look to them for their overview and for direction to take the planet. Isn't it interesting that some of the first, some of the contactees were told by the alleged space alien souls that, on their spacecrafts using hybridized, human equivalent vehicles to communicate with, that their planet had was decimated by war. It was one example. And another example was that they had environmental catastrophe. And so now you have people that, are trying to build up their weapons to try to, if there's going to be a war, to try to win the war. Okay? And that's been happening all over the planet for, well, as soon as technologies came about, they were making weapons of war. Uh, Even before that, but they were crude weapons at that time. And now they're sophisticated weapons that can kill millions or thousands or hundreds of thousands or whatever the numbers are. But and and so that's following the mindset of the space aliens that that if there's going to be a war, they want to win it. And also the way the space aliens have tried to convince people that Jesus doesn't exist, or that Jesus was a space alien, and that his kingdom are actually coming to destroy the earth. And so humans need to have the military weapons to protect themselves from the invading forces. Stephen Greer has talked about this to some degree, but it seems like he's changed a little bit in some ways, but in other ways, I have a lot of difficulty believing in a number of the things that he says. But um, so that's another example of, and they were talked about in Beyond Human tapes that you wouldn't, if there were any miracles that were going to happen or any holograms of like Jesus with flowing robes and or just even an individual that comes to the earth somehow and people become aware of it and he's got long hair and flowing robes and he's showing scars on his side or his hands, not to believe them. It's not from the next level. I mean, he's not saying not to believe them, but he's saying that they're not coming from the next level. So therefore, if you want to know the truth and if you want to connect with the real creators of this planet and the life forms on it, then you're going to see that as a charade. And Tiendo talked about that in 1978, that if a spacecraft came, just don't get on any spacecraft. And they were asked at the time, well, how are we going to know whether it's your spacecraft or because they were talking about them leaving before us at that time in 1978. That might be a possibility to prepare us for it. And he said, well, how will we know? And they just said, you'll know. And it's because they'll give us that knowing. They give us everything. Those are gifts that are given to us. We can't really take credit for anything but thirsting for their minds. That we can take full credit for. I mean, not that it's something that next level members want to walk around and say, look at how I thirst for their minds. That would be a human way of looking at it, as a competition or something, which next level members aren't in competition, so they wouldn't do that. So that would be behavior that was stimulated by the space alien souls. That became the norm. The things from the space alien souls become the norm in society. Their law and order, the ways that they organize humans all organize their police forces. I'm not saying that the next level doesn't have an influence over all that in certain places, certain times, in certain ways, to certain degrees. But by and large, their setups uh, from the space aliens given to humans as they see that humans are in positions of leadership in order to basically capture everybody's attention and have us be nationalistic or ethnic, no, how do you say that? Focus on our ethnicity as being what we are identifying with, or focusing on our gender as what we identify as, or focusing on our sexual preferences, what we identify as, or focusing on our wealth or our health as our identity. When all those things are, even though there's value in your health, um, uh, um, the ultimate health would be the next level mind health that we can have when we seek to draw on their mind and have it uh, change us and allow it to change us uh, by trying to implement the changes. If you're having a big problem with some type of behavior, then seek changes, and the next level will help you through it. I know it's easy to say, um, but it is part of the process. Let's see. Hopefully, he'll think of it as learning experience. Right, sorority, right? And he did. I was there. Rise Above's here, and it says, Hi, Kathy, Sawyer, and chat. Good to see you all. And it says, Thomas stuck his fingers in Jesus' hands and side. He was completely real post resurrection. Right, I think that was true. Uh, for whatever it's worth, I'm going to repeat something Doe said about that, and that even if it wasn't true, some people, Christians, would say that if that didn't happen, that all of Christianity is a fraud. In so many words, they say things like that. And um, but Doe felt like that's like ignoring all the things he said and did while he was incarnate. And he said a lot. And if somebody is not anti Christ, then they're not. Then they know what things that Jesus said, and they try to put those things into motion that describe the way his mind worked and what was important for him to share with human kingdom at that time. And if they do embrace the things he said entirely, all the things he said, that you can still find in the red letter edition, and you can see in the back of the Heaven's Gate book the primary scriptures that they felt uh, most told of the qualifications to becoming a member of the next level, the kingdom of heaven, if you want to put it in those less accurate terms. Uh, the kingdom in the elevated areas would be, even though kingdom has a little bit of a connotation, but we're talking about evolutionary kingdom level above human, um, then we would, if we knew what Jesus was saying about all those things, then we would see those same characteristics if we studied the teachings of Tian-Do, and the in-depth understanding about what they were all about is contained. And they knew that that's where people would go, and they expected that people would be cataloging them, and and that the public would have access, not just a select few that proved to somebody that they deserved to see them. That's a distorted way of thinking. There's some instructions that are wrong to change. I mean, all instructions are wrong to change. And the way the next level gives instructions, uh, uh, they give you instructions and then they say that they give you an out. In other words, so that you don't have to follow those instructions. But if you don't, then you're not putting into effect necessarily. You might be still, depends on what you choose to do. But if what you choose to do goes against what they were preferring you to do, which they spell out, then you're not using their mind at that moment during that time in that way. It's that plain and simple. And you'll hear Doug talking about in this tape 266 about that you've got to follow instructions is very important. I mean, in a sense, you could look at the whole Moses experiment as being teaching people to follow instructions when they uh, believe in uh, that their leader is operating uh, um, by the task given to that leader as an older member to lead them. And you could say, well, some of the people in the Moses camp didn't look to Moses, and it's true. And he tried to weed them out because he didn't want that interference. And the next level participated in that because the next level is interested in growing souls. They're not interested in those that want to turn those souls away from uh, growing towards next level membership. And so the vehicles that are uh, being occupied by minds that are trying to go against the next level's reality are at times the next level is going to see to it that they aren't um, influencing people. I don't know, how that works exactly because I'm not saying that people who die are being punished by the next level. That's not the way it works. It's that they end up being sorted to what the best place for them is in continued growth. So even individuals that are dying in some of these horrible events like took place in Texas, huh? The floods, yeah. We were living in that exact area by Medina Lake not too many months ago, and there wasn't any sign of that kind of water. And so it's really strange to see that happening there. But but the next level, you know, nothing is lost in the next level. individuals are going to lose vehicles, and there's going to be pain and suffering from that, from the ones that are still alive that knew those vehicles or had relationships with them. Um, uh, and so I hope for them that they will come to terms with. It might take some time to come to terms with uh, those experiences and have a continued belief in the kingdom of God, because that can separate individuals from that kind of a belief if they let it happen. Because they can think, what kind of God would take away a loved one, which of course is throughout the human kingdom a point of view that could be happening and is happening. But this whole idea that the space aliens are the biggest demonstration of the Antichrist, I wanted to add, is because they're anti human. And where did they get that anti human teaching? It's not that humans are bad, but in order to graduate into being a next level member, one has to become anti remaining in human behaviors and ways. And the things that are of value to humans are all going to be separated from the more and more individuals grow towards next level membership. But that doesn't mean that, like Jim Melody talked about in the exit videos, that like where Jesus talked about hating even your own members of your own family, even your own children. But you're not really hating those individuals. You're hating that they are trying to take you away from moving closer to your older members, even though they're doing it and they don't necessarily know any better. That's why Jesus said, love your enemies, because the next level is also providing them with love. And if they're not able to receive it, it's because they don't know any better. And that's what he said about those that condemned him. Yeah, forgive them for they know not what they do. Which was a genuine, yeah, and point of view that he had. And sometimes, Jesus was saying things out loud so that others would see the way that he was talking to his older member. And you can see that in this tape, even, that Doe talks about things that he was saying with his older member. Um, Not that he was trying to impress us with how he talked with his older member, like that video that you. Yeah, I do too, and I'm getting kind of worn out, starting to drag. My energy is kind of starting to wane. Finch is here. He says, "Hi, Sawyer and Kathy. A little late, but glad to see all of you." Yes, yes, glad to see you as well. Um, we've got quite a community going here, right? But just so anybody's new to this, there is no cult and there is no inner circles, and we're not right, and we're not leaders. We're not pretending to be T and Doe or anything like that. It's completely unnecessary. In fact, it's the opposite of that. It would be wrong for anybody to claim to be carrying on their teachers and to bring new information. We can all, every student at this moment, however degree of studentship they have with T and O and the next level, can be performing the task of standing up for them and or getting their information out, disseminating their information, sharing with others ways of getting to their information.
What's going on in the
so
chat?
they can have the experience of learning what they were really all about instead of what the media says, because the media is terrible. The media that was talking about them is, by and large, even though the individuals necessarily aren't, are acting in antichrist ways. Because even the religious are acting, a lot of them, or some of them, are acting in antichrist ways. Because if you go against, like, what did Jesus say was the only unforgivable sin? Blasphemy against the Holy Spirit. What does that mean? Well, blasphemy has the part of that word in the Greek. I don't know what the word is in the Greek. Maybe that is the word, but has to do with speaking out loud, kind of. It's you're sharing your views with other people, and influencing when it's against the next level's reality and their teachings. Then you're influencing other people to go against the next level. And the reason I believe that that is the only unforgivable sin is because once you go down that road, uh, you start to believe your own rant more and more. And you lose the perspective that the next level has and that the next level gave to you. You lose it enough to where you subtly, your mind is diminishing that you got from them, and you can't even see that anymore. You can get to that point. And the next level, meanwhile, from whenever an individual is starting to go down that road, are continuously giving that individual opportunities to not continue to go down that road. But it gets harder and harder the more if we go down that road. I know because I started to go down that road after I left. And so uh, and thankfully, I had still enough next level mind in me that I could still recognize my older members and didn't go against them. And I think because of that, and saying so publicly, I think the next level decided to help me get a little more back on track of wanting to be of service again. That's what I mean by back on track, wanting to be of service again, because service to the next level is what every member of the next level wants. Because um, because it's like sharing this information is actually a force, and it's a form of love.
Did old school Dave come in?
No, I haven't seen Old School Dave today, this afternoon.
Hopefully he's okay because he's in that area.
Oh, he was over there? That's right. I don't know if we knew exactly where he lived, did we?
So
Right. 'Cause we were going to meet up with Old School Dave. We tried a few times. It didn't come together. So I don't know. I guess I regret in some ways. But I
next
was,
time around, we'll see.
yeah, maybe there'll be another time that'll be better. Um,
It's anything in the chat.
no,
Okay, so are you ready to?
yeah, I'm ready to close. So I touched on all the things that are in my title.
It's 6.
And then, yeah, so I want to try to get to bed earlier because I got to work in the morning.
It's
It's
your
my turn
turn.
to work.
I ain't gonna do it.
All right, so folks, unless somebody says something in the chat, I'm going to have to close.
Don't say anything.
Good to see you all. Good night.